Hello and welcome to Marketing Global Edition with me, Jasmine Montgomery, and of course Piers Geiler, who you all know. And today we're very happy to be joined by our friend and colleague David Goulden. And we have asked David on the podcast for a particular reason, because what we want to talk about today is football. Now, I know very little about football. Piers thinks he knows quite a lot about football, but David actually knows a lot about football. I'm confused about something, and it's a branding issue, okay? So I support Arsenal. My dad supports Arsenal. My son supports Arsenal. Arsenal, apparently, are doing really well this season, and apparently we've got a good shot of winning. But here's the thing. I don't really understand what we're winning, because there are so many different competitions out there, right? There's the Premiership, the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Europa Cup, the Barclays Premiership, the I don't know what. Now, I'm very old, so some of these are old and you're going to be laughing at me. But the thing is, I don't understand what we're winning. And it leads me to the question, which I want the boys to help me answer. Is the branding of all of these different championships confusing? And if so, what should we do about it? So, David, first of all, put us in the picture a little bit about, set me straight, like, what is Arsenal potentially winning this season?
Oh God, I think I feel like if I speak, then it could sort of curse things. So
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'll tell you what they're in.
I'll tell you supporter, right?
Tell us what they're in. Okay, that's a really good point, and I don't mean to bring a curse upon their
No,
heads,
it's fine,
the gods
it's
of
fine.
football. What are we playing in? What are these championships?
I'll tell you the sort of state of play at the moment. So
Great.
obviously, I think the most significant thing they're in for, which I think most people want, is they are currently top of the Premier League. They are top by 7 points.
Okay.
With I think it's 8 games to go, so they're with a very good chance of potentially doing that. So that would be amazing. But that's not the only competition they're in. So there are in England there are famously 2 domestic cups, which actually isn't the case in a lot of other countries. So we are in the final of what's known as the Carabao Cup. Well, it's actually known as the League Cup, but it's had actually a lot of different sponsors over the years. It's had like ﷺ, it's had Worthington Beer, Carling. Famously, it was once known as the Milk Cup in the 1980s. Quite amusingly, literally was sponsored by milk. So it's gone a long way since then. So we're in the final of that against Man City. We are in the FA Cup quarter-finals, and then also we are in the last 16 of the Champions League, which used to be known as the European Cup up until 1992, and we are in the last 16.
Hold on. So the Championship, the Premier League, the FA Cup, are these all different cups?
Yes.
Never mind the Carabao. Carabao? Carabao?
Also known as the League Cup, not the Premier League, or the Champions League, or the Europa League, or the Major League. I mean, come on, it's not simple. You're it, right? So, Jasmine likes football but doesn't know much about it. I love football. I don't know much about it, but I pretend to by wearing things like my son's shirt, right? So, but I'm not an expert, and I get it wrong now and then, and I see people looking at me like I'm an idiot, right? So there's a sort of thing you need to know, and then there's people who really know about football, who just you ask them a question: is the branding of football and the leagues complex? They go, no, because they understand it all. But it is surely complicated.
Right. So David, what do you think? Is it confusing?
I think it's got more confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the big wigs at FIFA and UEFA and other bodies have seen, the money spinning potential of the game and have acted with expanding competitions like the World Cup, making it longer and creating new competitions, some of which, quite frankly, don't even need to be there. So last summer was the inaugural FIFA World Club Cup. Now, this competition used to exist, but now it became a month-long tournament where they took teams from Europe, from South America, from Asia, from America, and they were playing each other in group games. And to be quite honest with you, this was just a complete joke. In terms of the quality.
So if it's getting where there's kind of there's certainly there's tournament proliferation, right?
Yes.
Is that why it's confusing because there are so many of them, or is it because the sponsorship deals change all the time, and so 1 minute it's the Barclays Cup and the next minute it's somebody else, the Milk Cup? Do you think it's possible that people like yourself who love football actually embrace the complexity? Is it a tribal badge of belonging for somebody like yourself to know the vernacular, to know all the terminology, to know all the names, to be up to date with the competitions and what they're called? And is it a badge of pride that actually differentiates you from somebody like Piers, who's a kind of quasi football fan but doesn't cut the mustard like you do?
I don't know if I see it as a badge of pride. I mean, I never really have. It's just, to be honest, from my perspective, it's kind of been necessary, because if you follow your team in competitions, and Arsenal tend to go, we tend to go deep in a lot of competitions as we are at the moment, it's kind of just really necessary.
I understand the need for more and more leagues, right? There's a need for them, there's a role for them, there's plenty of teams, there's lots of money to be made and lots of sponsors. I get all that. But I don't think the branding's moved on. So everything has the same naming approach. There's descriptive names that are used, right? Cup, League,
right?
Premier, Europe, World. And no one differentiates from all that. And the world of branding, I don't know, not everyone goes cars, BMW cars, Volkswagen cars, actually they do with banks, funnily enough, but Sainsbury's, Walmart, Carrefour. They don't say supermarket. They don't need to, right? And I think maybe it's time for the whole branding debate to move on in the world of football, to give it more differentiation. This proper brands.
Well, I think it's interesting you say that. You would compare the sort of this confusing ecosystem to, say, something like the NFL, which is much clearer in terms of what teams need to do. There's a league phase with where teams will play each other in their respective divisions, and then you get the sort of top two from those leagues tend to go into the playoffs, and then the playoffs whittle down into championships, and then you get the Super Bowl, and that's what everyone is aiming to do. And
Great
the same is
example.
true.
I can
The
understand
same is true
that.
with the NBA as well. So you don't really have, but it's not a global game. So because it's not a global game, it's very easy to have that sort of simplification. Like I said, the football ecosystem has become much more complicated. Also due to the fact that in the last 4 years, and UEFA created another European, I wouldn't call it European Cup, but another European competition called the Europa League, which the idea of it was to create, allow for more teams to participate in European trophies.
Champions League, the Europa League, and isn't there the Nations League as well?
The Conference League. So,
come on.
Is Britain, are we allowed to play in the Europa League since Brexit?
yeah, of course. Yeah, there's nothing to do with that.
I guess one of the things that seems like it's a force for chaos for me is that not only do these leagues keep changing and new leagues come about and so on, but sponsorship has meant that in the past, historically, right, that we've had like Barclays and Carling and so on. Wasn't the Premiership at one point the Barclays Premier League?
It was the Carling and the Barclays. So
Right.
I think what's happened, interestingly, from a branding perspective, this has been very interesting, because when the Premier League was in its infancy, it was I think it was Carling who was the first sponsor. Then it was called the Barclay Card Premier League. Then it was just the Barclays for a while. So that was to create prestige around the brand of the Premier League by having it
Because they were paid
associated.
loads of money by sponsors,
Exactly.
realistically, yeah.
But now arguably the brand of the Premier League is so huge, it's eclipsed its original sponsors. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be sponsored. It does its own in-house. They do its own in-house branding.
Can I just ask a really dumb question? Is the Premiership the same as the Premier League?
It used to be called, I think old school fans like myself would have referred to it as the Premiership. It was never called the Premiership. I think people referred to it as that.
Okay,
It's now called the Premier League. But a lot of people now overseas and in America refer to it with the acronym EPL, which I would never, ever use. But globally, that's what it's known as, like the NFL. So that's because it doesn't have any, I think that's because it doesn't have any of the sponsored branding anymore from the people, from the companies I just mentioned. So it's now on its own now. It's its own identity. It's the EPL.
I presume that stands for something. Does that stand for something like English
Premier League?
Having an
rugby, sorry, just to interject. There's so many leagues that there's confusion with the English with the Rugby Premier League. They've rebranded recently to the Prem to give them some differentiation. So they've realised there is confusion. They're in rugby, which is obviously a different sport, but they've pulled back and changed. I mean, they're called the Gallagher Prem. That's right, because they're sponsored by Gallagher at the moment.
See, what I wonder is, like, the Premier League obviously isn't going to change its name, right? There's a huge amount of equity in the Premier League, and then these other leagues, do you think? I wonder if they are just haven't thought about coming up with names that are a bit more differentiated, or whether they're more cynically, actually trying to leverage the equity of the Premier League.
You can understand because it's sport and people play in leagues. It's a traditional thing, but I think it's just the world of football has evolved so much that it has turned into a very commercial thing. Which the world of brands have a role, right? A really big role. And the football clubs are the biggest brands. There's such powerful brands. The English Premier League is a powerful brand, but there's an opportunity for these to be better branded in terms of name and culture. There really is a massive opportunity, actually, for everyone to have more clarity. Yeah. And then they can build those brands and they'll get more value in them.
Exactly.
Right? With clarity, consistency, and leadership in what they're talking about. At the moment, it's messy. They've got their attention. It's lazy almost, actually, because fans will watch.
I wonder if it's lazy or if it's cynical. If it's the lesser leagues benefit from sort of a kind of halo effect from
that's a very good point.
Like Premier League, I wonder. It's the category vernacular, isn't it? And if somebody like the Premier League has vast amounts of brand equity, and you speak that category vernacular, in a sense, it's borrowed glory, it's borrowed equity. I don't know. I mean, listening to, I guess, Piers, you're probably the best person to umpire this particular match, because I think it's bonkers and confusing. David has such a good grip on it that he's clearly not confused. So, Piers, what do you think? You think this is a confusing naming space that needs our help, or should we just leave well alone?
That's a really good question. For me, if you're in, and you will it, and you're so passionate about football, you're in, and you understand all these things, and there are an awful lot of people who are in.
Yeah, if you know, you know.
And I think if those who don't know need to invest the time to find out.
Listen, it's been a really fascinating discussion. Thank you both so much. Obviously, we pray that we haven't jinxed Arsenal's chances of winning one of these many cups in the next month. No. I will try to get my head around the tournaments that we have a chance of winning. I don't fully understand it. All I know is go Gunners. Thank you both very, very much. And if you've been sitting there throwing things at your radio because of my idiocy when it comes to understanding this stuff, apologies. But thank you so much, David, for coming on and being our football expert. And we'll see you all same time next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Marketing Global Edition is sponsored by 𝐴𝐷𝐶𝐸, the ad generator for small businesses that serves you effective and affordable ads in seconds. And by 7 Brands, the international advertising and branding agency that has worked with clients around the world from Coca-Cola to Facebook.